Through the gossamer curtains of 42 Oak Hill Drive, Karen Matthews performed her morning ritual with practiced precision. Steam rose from her artisanal coffee cup, a wedding gift she'd never quite warmed to, as she watched Oak Hill's usual serenity dissolve into chaos. A massive U-Haul truck had been blocking her carefully manicured view of the Petersons' old colonial house since dawn, its orange and white exterior clashing with the neighborhood's subdued palette. Her iPhone buzzed incessantly. The Oak Hill Neighborhood Watch Group chat, typically reserved for lost cats and lawn service recommendations, had exploded with activity. Did anyone know the Petersons' house sold? When did they even list it? I didn't see any signs. Karen's perfectly maintained French-tipped fingers hovered over her keyboard, ready to contribute to the speculation, when movement caught her eye. A sleek black Mercedes GLS, its windows tinted just past the legal limit, glided to a stop behind the U-Haul. The car alone would have fit perfectly into Oak Hill's unspoken standards of success, but its driver shattered Karen's expectations. A tall black man emerged, his charcoal suit crisp despite the summer humidity. He moved with authority, simultaneously checking his phone and speaking into what appeared to be a police radio. Behind him, a teenage girl in nail sweats climbed out of the passenger seat, her braids caught in the morning sunlight. "Mom, are you seriously still spying on the neighbors?" Sarah, Karen's daughter, appeared beside her, already dressed for her hospital shift. "You're going to make yourself late for yoga again." "I'm not spying," Karen protested, adjusting her position slightly to maintain her view. "I'm being vigilant. The community newsletter specifically said we should report anything unusual." Sarah rolled her eyes, grabbing her travel mug. "Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what they meant. A family moving into their new home. Shocking." Below, the scene continued to unfold. A second car pulled up, this one a more modest hybrid. A woman emerged wearing what appeared to be legal robes, her natural hair styled elegantly, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than Karen's monthly country club dues. She called out something to the man, who laughed and jogged over to help her with a box marked Chambers ILES. Confidential. Karen's phone buzzed again. Helen from 3 doors down had joined the digital reconnaissance. "Just Googled the sale. All public records are sealed. Very suspicious." The moving truck's rear door rolled up with a metallic groan, revealing a collection of furniture that Karen couldn't help but assess. Her eyebrows rose at the sight of what appeared to be an authentic mid-century modern dining set. The man in the suit had removed his jacket now, his shoulder holster visible as he directed 2 movers with practiced efficiency. "Did you see that?" Karen whispered, more to herself than to her departing daughter. "He's armed." Sarah paused at the door, her scrubs rustling. "Mom, please don't do anything weird. Remember the incident with the Buddhist temple's construction crew?" "That was different," Karen muttered, but Sarah had already left, the front door closing with a pointed click. Karen watched as the teenage girl set up a ring light near the driveway, apparently preparing to film something on her phone. The woman in robes had disappeared inside, but the man remained, examining the property's perimeter with an intensity that made Karen nervous. He paused at each window, each door, making notes on his phone. The neighborhood watch chat pinged again. Anyone else seeing this? Karen took a long sip of her now lukewarm coffee, her other hand already pulling up the Oak Hill Community Safety Committee's number. The last break-in had been 6 months ago, and she promised herself it wouldn't happen again. Not on her watch. Not in her neighborhood. She just couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right about this perfect summer morning on Oak Hill Drive. As dusk painted Oak Hill's pristine streets in muted purples and oranges, Karen Matthews found herself unable to step away from her vigilant post. The moving truck had departed hours ago, leaving behind what she considered a disturbing tranquility. Her husband's text, "Working late again, don't wait up," gave her tacit permission to maintain her watch. Through her high-end security camera's feed displayed on her iPad, she observed the man, now dressed in dark athletic wear, methodically circling the Petersons, No, his house for the third time in the past hour. Gone was the sharp suit and commanding presence from this morning, replaced by what she considered a more concerning demeanor. Look at this, she typed into the neighborhood watch chat, attaching a grainy screenshot. He's been circling the house since sunset. The responses were immediate. OMG, just like that break-in on Maple last month. Should we call someone? Better safe than sorry. Karen's mind raced back to last month's community safety meeting. Officer Sullivan's words echoed in her memory. Sophisticated burglars often pose as new residents. They'll spend days learning the neighborhood's patterns. She watched as the man paused at each ground floor window, his phone's flashlight beam cutting through the growing darkness as he made notes on his device. The teenage girl, his supposed daughter, had spent the afternoon creating what Karen assumed were TikTok videos in the driveway, but she'd gone inside an hour ago. The woman in robes hadn't reappeared since receiving a phone call that sent her hurrying out in her hybrid, leaving the man alone at the property. Karen's fingers drummed against her quartz countertop as she watched him disappear around the back of the house again. The Nextdoor app on her phone had been lighting up with reports from neighboring communities. 3 break-ins in the past month, all following a similar pattern. Professional thieves masquerading as legitimate buyers, testing security weaknesses before striking. Mom. Sarah's voice carried from the front door as she returned from her shift. Are you still? Oh my God, you are. Sarah, look at this. Karen beckoned her daughter over, pointing to her iPad screen where the man had reappeared, now testing the garage door's security panel. Tell me this isn't suspicious. Sarah leaned closer, her hospital name badge catching the kitchen's recessed lighting. What I see is someone checking their own property's security. You know, like a responsible homeowner. Or maybe, just maybe, someone who works in law enforcement. That's exactly what they want us to think, Karen insisted, her voice dropping to a whisper as if he might hear her through the sophisticated surveillance system her husband had installed after the last neighborhood incident. Remember what Officer Sullivan said about professional thieves? Sarah's sigh carried the weight of 1,000 similar conversations. I also remember what Dr. Harris said in our implicit bias training at the hospital last week. Mom, please don't. But Karen had stopped listening. The man had moved to the side gate, his actions hidden from her camera's view. Her thumb hovered over the emergency contacts on her phone. The woman, his supposed wife, still hadn't returned, and the lights inside remained mostly dark, except for what appeared to be the teenager's room upstairs. I'm going to bed, Sarah announced, her voice tight with disappointment. Please, please don't do anything you'll regret tomorrow. As her daughter's footsteps faded upstairs, Karen's security camera caught the man entering a code into the back door's electronic lock. The fact that he knew the code should have reassured her, but instead, it only heightened her suspicion. Modern thieves were thorough, after all. The final message from the neighborhood watch chat sealed her decision. Better to look foolish than be sorry later. Remember the Sterling Heights robbery? They waited too long to call. Karen's hand trembled slightly as she pulled up the emergency number, not 911. Not yet, but the direct line to Oak Hills Police Precinct that she programmed into her phone months ago. As the line rang, she watched the man disappear inside his supposed new home, her certainty growing with each unanswered question swirling in her mind. Oak Hill Police Department, this is Dispatcher Collins speaking. What's your emergency? Karen's manicured fingers gripped her phone tighter as she pressed closer to her bay window, the evening shadows providing perfect cover. Yes, hello. I'm calling from 42 Oak Hill Drive. There's a suspicious individual conducting what appears to be surveillance of the Peterson property. Behind the house she was watching, Marcus Richardson crouched down to examine the foundation's weatherproofing, mentally cataloging the repairs needed before winter. 20 years of police work had taught him to be thorough, especially when it came to protecting his family. His daughter Maya's voice drifted from the backyard, accompanied by the gentle crinkle of moving boxes being unpacked. Can you describe the individual? Dispatcher Collins' voice carried the practiced neutrality of someone who'd heard it all. Karen lowered her voice conspiratorially. African-American male, approximately 6 feet tall, athletic build. He's wearing a dark blue Nike jacket and black pants. She paused, watching Marcus check another window. He's been circling the house for the past hour, examining entry points and taking photos or notes on his phone. The dispatcher's keyboard clicks punctuated the silence. Has he attempted to break in? Not yet, but Karen's attention snapped to Maya, who had emerged from the backyard carrying an empty box. The teenager waved at something across the street. Probably another teenager making a TikTok, Karen assumed. He has someone with him. A young girl. They're making it look like they're moving in, but something feels off. The woman who was here earlier left in a hurry. What Karen couldn't know was that Judge Diana Richardson had been called away to sign an emergency warrant, leaving her husband to handle the moving arrangements. Maya, having finished cataloging her room's boxes for her unpacking video series, called out to her father. "Dad, where do you want Mom's law books? They're like super heavy." Marcus straightened up, fishing out his phone. The screen displayed a text from his wife. "Emergency warrant signed. Heading to the station to process it. Don't wait up. Love you both." "Is the subject still on the property?" Dispatcher Collins asked, her tone shifting slightly. "Yes," Karen whispered, watching Marcus return to his methodical inspection. "He's checking the windows again. I've never seen him in the neighborhood before, and we weren't notified about any new residents through the Homeowners Association." She failed to mention that the HOA notifications were typically delayed by weeks. The dispatcher's voice remained professional, but something in it changed. "Ma'am, we'll send officers to investigate. Please remain inside your home." Karen allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Better safe than sorry, she thought, watching Marcus disappear around the corner again. The security footage from her doorbell camera would vindicate her concerns, she was sure of it. What she didn't see was Dispatcher Collins sending a quick message to Officers Chen and Sullivan. Possible 10 to 44 at 42 Oak Hill. New resident versus concerned neighbor situation. Subject matching Chief Richardson's description. Outside, Marcus pulled out his notebook, Old Habits Died Hard, and jotted down his findings. 3 windows with aging weather stripping, 1 loose security camera mount, and a gap in the fence that needed addressing. His previous precinct had seen a spike in burglaries through similar vulnerabilities, and he wasn't taking chances with his family's safety. Maya approached, her braids swaying in the evening breeze. "Dad, you're doing that cop thing again, aren't you? Mom says you're supposed to be relaxing." Marcus chuckled, tucking away his notebook. "Just being thorough, baby girl. 20 years on the force doesn't just switch off because I got promoted to chief." He glanced at his watch, noting the time. "Let's order that pizza we promised your mom we wouldn't get." As Maya squealed in delight and pulled up the delivery app on her phone, neither of them noticed the subtle flash of red and blue lights approaching in the distance, nor Karen Matthews standing triumphantly at her window, certain she had just prevented a crime and protected her precious neighborhood. The perfect storm was about to break over Oak Hill Drive, and none of them were truly prepared for what would follow. Officers Sarah Chen and Mike Sullivan sat in their patrol car, stealing glances at each other as they processed the dispatcher's message. The morning's briefing was still fresh in their minds. Chief Richardson standing at the podium, his voice resonating through the conference room as he outlined his vision for community policing. Now, barely 12 hours later, they were responding to a call about him casing his own home. "How do you want to play this?" Sullivan asked, running a hand through his graying hair as they turned onto Oak Hill Drive. Years of experience had taught him that these situations required delicate handling, especially in affluent neighborhoods like this one. Chen killed the cruiser's lights before they could illuminate the street. By the book, but with a twist. "Let's see how observant our new chief really is." A smile played at the corners of her mouth as she spotted Maya Richardson in the front yard, now dancing with her phone while a pizza delivery car pulled away. Karen Matthews practically yanked open her front door before they could knock, ushering them inside with an urgency that made Chen's jaw clench. The interior of 42 Oak Hill Drive was a shrine to upper-middle-class taste. All neutral tones and carefully curated family photos. "Thank goodness you're here," Karen whispered, leading them to her sophisticated home security command center, a bank of tablets displaying various camera feeds. "I've documented everything. Look at this footage from the past hour." Sullivan maintained his professional demeanor, though Chen caught the slight twitch in his cheek. On the screen, their new police chief could be seen examining his property's security features with the thoroughness that had earned him commendations in his previous district. "He's been doing this for hours," Karen continued, scrolling through timestamps. "Taking notes, checking windows, testing locks. The girl with him keeps making these videos, probably casing the interior for her social media followers." She said social media like it was a particularly distasteful disease. Chen's phone buzzed quietly. A message from Chief Richardson. "Enjoying the show, officers." She stifled a laugh. Of course he'd spotted them arriving. "Ma'am," Sullivan began, his voice carefully neutral, "have you attempted to speak with the individuals?" Karen looked aghast. "Of course not. The Community Safety Bulletin specifically advised against confronting suspicious persons." She pulled up Nextdoor on her tablet. "There have been break-ins reported in neighboring communities. They're using increasingly sophisticated methods, like buying houses and moving in." Chen couldn't help herself, earning a warning look from Sullivan. "You don't understand," Karen insisted, leading them to her bay window. "Oak Hill has standards, protocols. The HOA requires all new residents to be properly vetted and introduced to the community. We weren't notified about any sale. And look at him. He's clearly examining entry points." Outside, Marcus had moved to the front yard, casually inspecting the porch lights. Maya had settled on the front steps, munching pizza and still recording with her phone. The domestic tranquility of the scene made Karen's concerns seem increasingly absurd. "I think," Sullivan said carefully, "we should go speak with them. Protocol. You understand?" Karen nodded eagerly. "Of course. I have all the footage ready to share, and my Ring doorbell caught some suspicious behavior earlier when—" "That won't be necessary," Chen interrupted, already moving toward the door. She'd spotted the chief giving them the subtle hand signal they'd learned about in the morning briefing, his sign for "follow my lead." As they stepped onto Karen's perfectly maintained front walk, Sullivan muttered under his breath, $20 says the chief turns this into a teaching moment. "No bet," Chen whispered back. "Did you see his daughter's phone? She's live streaming this whole thing to her social justice channel. Tomorrow's community policing seminar just got its perfect case study." They approached the Richardson property with measured steps, aware of Karen watching intently from her window. Marcus had positioned himself perfectly, casual yet authoritative, exactly as he'd appeared in countless community outreach photos. "Good evening, sir," Chen called out, fighting to keep her face professional. "We received a call about suspicious activity." The chief's responding smile held volumes of understanding and perhaps a touch of mischief. Oak Hill's quiet evening was about to become a masterclass in breaking down barriers, whether Karen Matthews was ready for it or not. The warm glow of the porch light illuminated Marcus Richardson's face as he turned to greet the approaching officers, his expression a perfect blend of authority and amusement. Behind him, Maya had switched to her front-facing camera, her eyes sparkling with the recognition of viral content in the making. "Officers," Marcus called out, his voice carrying just enough for Karen to hear from her strategic position by her hydrangeas, where she'd rushed to check on her flowers the moment the police stepped outside. Perfect timing. I was hoping someone from the department would stop by. Karen edged closer, smartphone at the ready, expecting to witness justice in action. Instead, she watched Officer Chen's face break into a knowing smile. "Chief Richardson," Chen responded, matching his professional tone. We received a call about suspicious activity at this address. Something about someone checking windows and taking notes. The color drained from Karen's face so quickly she had to steady herself against her prized flowering shrub. Chief. The word echoed in her mind like a gong. Ah, yes, Marcus replied, pulling out his notebook. I was conducting a preliminary security assessment of the property. Would you mind taking a look at these vulnerability points I've identified? Officer Sullivan, your experience with residential break-in patterns would be particularly valuable here. Maya, barely containing her glee, narrated quietly to her phone. So, y'all want to see what happens when someone calls the cops on the new police chief? Because that's what's happening right now. Plot twist not what I expected. The scene froze momentarily as a sleek hybrid car pulled into the driveway. Judge Diana Richardson emerged, still in her robes, carrying a stack of files. She took in the tableau before her. 2 officers, her husband, their daughter filming, and a shell-shocked neighbor clutching her hydrangeas, and assessed the situation with practiced judicial efficiency. Let me guess, Diana said, her voice carrying the weight of years on the bench. Someone called the police on the police chief. Karen's smartphone slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering onto her immaculate garden path. The sound drew all eyes to her, standing amid her carefully cultivated flowers, face burning with the dawning realization of her catastrophic mistake. Mrs. Matthews, Marcus called out, his tone genuinely warm. Would you like to join us? I was just about to explain some neighborhood security improvements I'm considering implementing. Your involvement in the Community Watch program would make your input invaluable. Maya's camera caught it all. Her father's masterful diffusal of tension, Officer Chen's professional nod, Judge Richardson's knowing smile, and most importantly, Karen Matthews' journey across the lawn. Each step a visible internal battle between mortification and curiosity. I don't. Karen stammered, reaching the group just as Maya whispered to her livestream audience, watch this, fam. My dad's about to show you how real change happens. Marcus extended his hand, his badge glinting on his belt where his jacket had fallen open. Marcus Richardson, Oak Hill's new chief of police. This is my wife, Judge Diana Richardson, and you've already seen our daughter Maya documenting our move for her social justice channel. Karen's hand moved automatically to shake his, years of social conditioning taking over where conscious thought had failed. The Neighborhood Watch program. We weren't notified. Actually, Diana interjected smoothly, pulling a document from her briefcase. The HOA approved our residency last month. The notification delay was due to an administrative oversight. I have the paperwork right here. Perks of being a judge. You learn to keep everything documented. Officer Sullivan coughed a high laugh as Maya's running commentary continued. Y'all seeing this? This is how you handle prejudice. With class, receipts, and a whole lot of plot twists. Don't forget to like and follow. Marcus seized the moment, his years of community outreach experience shining through. Mrs. Matthews, why don't you tell us about your ideas for neighborhood security? I'm particularly interested in your surveillance system setup. Perhaps we could use it as a model for other community watch programs. And there, under the warm porch light of 43 Oak Hill Drive, with Maya's livestream count climbing and 2 highly amused officers watching, began the most unexpected community policing success story of the year. As the initial tension dissolved into an awkward silence, Marcus Richardson recognized a familiar teachable moment emerging. He'd seen this scenario play out countless times over his 20-year career, though admittedly, never with himself as the subject of suspicion. Maya's livestream counter ticked steadily upward, her young audience captivated by the unfolding drama. You know, Marcus began, gesturing toward the porch steps. This reminds me of a story from when I was growing up. He caught his wife's subtle nod of approval as she settled onto the top step, her judicial robes creating an oddly formal contrast against the casual setting. Karen Matthews remained rooted in place, caught between flight and curiosity. Would you believe my own mother once called the police on our new neighbor? Marcus continued, his voice carrying the warm timbre that had made him a sought-after speaker at police community relations workshops. She was convinced he was casing our house. Turned out he was a retired Marine with OCD, checking his locks exactly 7 times every evening. A flicker of recognition crossed Karen's face. Officers Chen and Sullivan exchanged knowing looks. They'd witnessed their chief's disarming storytelling technique during morning briefings. "Dad," Maya interrupted, adjusting her camera angle. "Is this the Mr. Rodriguez story? The one with the garden hose incident?" "The very same," Marcus chuckled, noting how Karen's shoulders had begun to relax. "My mother was so embarrassed when she found out. She stress-baked for a week straight. Mr. Rodriguez gained 15 pounds from all the apologetic apple pies." A tiny laugh escaped Karen's lips before she could catch it. Diana, ever the skilled reader of human nature, seized the moment to create an opening. "Karen, may I call you Karen? Would you like to sit? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Neighborhood Watch program. Marcus has been talking about implementing something similar to it department-wide." Maya's livestream chat exploded. "Wait, they're all just gonna sit and talk? This is not how these videos usually end. Your parents are literally iconic." Karen hesitated, then gestured vaguely toward her house. "I should probably stay," Marcus offered, his tone making it feel less like an invitation and more like an opportunity. "I have a feeling your surveillance setup might be exactly what we need to model the new community safety initiative after. Officers Chen and Sullivan mentioned you've got quite the sophisticated system." Pride momentarily overcame embarrassment in Karen's expression. "It's really nothing special. Just a few carefully placed cameras and some motion sensors. 8 cameras, 3 motion sensors, and a real-time alert system that makes NeverEndingHope look outdated," Officer Chen corrected with a friendly smile. "That kind of attention to detail could be invaluable for our new Neighborhood Watch training program." Maya, who had been quietly narrating to her followers, suddenly straightened. "Oh my God, y'all. Plot twist incoming. Dad, isn't next week's community policing seminar about utilizing civilian security systems?" Marcus's eyes twinkled. "It is indeed, and we've been looking for a model home to demonstrate proper surveillance setup." He turned to Karen, who had unconsciously taken a step toward the porch. "Would you be interested in helping us show other neighborhoods how to set up effective but non-intrusive security systems?" The transformation on Karen's face was subtle but profound. Where moments ago there had been mortification, a glimmer of purpose began to shine through. Diana, with 20 years of courtroom experience reading people, recognized the exact moment when their unexpected neighbor shifted from potential antagonist to possible ally. "I do have some suggestions about camera placement," Karen ventured, finally taking a seat on the steps. "The HOA guidelines are a bit outdated when it comes to modern security needs." Officer Sullivan's radio crackled softly as Maya's livestream count hit 10,000. The teenager's whispered commentary captured the surreal scene. Her father, the police chief, deep in conversation with the woman who'd called the cops on him, while her mother, the judge, mediated the discussion about community safety reforms. "And this, my followers," Maya narrated quietly, "is how real change happens, not through confrontation, but through conversation. Though it helps if your dad's the police chief and your mom's a judge." Plot twist continues, community policing. This is Shawodoid. 3 weeks after the incident, as it had come to be known in Oak Hill circles, Karen Matthews stood before the community center's packed audience, her hands only slightly trembling as she adjusted the microphone. Maya Richardson's viral video, which had amassed over 2 million views, played on the projection screen behind her. "I thought I was protecting my community," Karen began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Instead, I learned I was part of a problem that needed solving." She glanced at Chief Richardson, who sat in the front row beside Judge Diana, both nodding encouragingly. The local news cameras rolled, their presence a testament to how a potentially volatile situation had transformed into something entirely unexpected. The headline scrolling across Channel 8's live feed read, Oak Hill leads revolutionary community policing initiative. When I first reviewed Chief Richardson's background, Karen continued, earning knowing chuckles from the audience, I discovered something remarkable. 20 years of decorated service. Pioneer of community-based policing programs. Former head of civil rights training at the police academy. And here I was, worried about him checking his own windows. Maya, recording from her usual spot, captured the subtle shift in the room. The uncomfortable recognition flickering across faces, the gentle nudges between spouses, the thoughtful nods from other Oak Hill residents who had harbored similar suspicions that first day. But here's the real story, Karen pressed on, clicking to the next slide. Since implementing our new integrated community safety program, developed in partnership with Chief Richardson, residential crime reports have dropped 60%. Not because we're watching our neighbors with suspicion, but because we're actually getting to know them. Diana leaned over to Marcus, whispering, Did you ever imagine this when you were checking those window locks? He squeezed her hand in response, watching as Karen unveiled the program's next phase, a sophisticated but ethical neighborhood watch system that emphasized community building over surveillance, connection over suspicion. Last month, I would have probably told you about my 8-camera security system, Karen admitted, earning more knowing laughs. Today, I'm prouder to tell you about the 8 new families I've personally welcomed to Oak Hill, including the Paddles next door to Chief Richardson, who, by the way, makes the most amazing biryani for our weekly community dinners. The presentation continued, showing clips from the past 3 weeks. Community coffee mornings in Karen's meticulously maintained garden. Judge Diana leading a workshop on citizens' rights and responsibilities. Chief Richardson conducting home security assessments that doubled as welcome visits for new residents. Maya's latest TikTok series, How My Dad's Property Inspection Changed a Community, played next, showcasing the transformation from that tense evening to the present. The comments scrolling live on screen reflected the impact. This is what real change looks like. Your dad turned a Karen into a caring neighbor. Community policing done right. As Karen wrapped up her presentation, Chief Richardson took the podium. The man who had once been reported as suspicious now stood as a symbol of positive change, his presence commanding respect rather than fear. Mrs. Matthews came to my door 3 weeks ago, convinced she was protecting her community. He began, his voice carrying the weight of 20 years of experience. Today, she actually is, not through suspicion and surveillance, but through leadership and understanding. The audience burst into applause as Karen rejoined her family in the front row, her daughter Sarah beaming proudly. The same neighbors who had eagerly participated in the Watch Chat drama weeks ago now crowded around with questions about implementing similar programs in their areas. Outside the community center, a reporter caught up with Maya, who was still streaming. Did you expect your video to spark such change? The teenager glanced at her father, who was deep in conversation with Karen about expanding the program to neighboring communities, then at her mother, who was explaining citizens' rights to an engaged group of residents. Sometimes, Maya responded, her voice carrying the wisdom of having witnessed real transformation. The most viral moments aren't the confrontations. They're the conversations that follow. And this conversation, it's just getting started. Her phone buzzed with another notification. The police academy had requested permission to use her footage in their community relations training program. The ripple effect, it seemed, was just beginning. 6 months after that fateful summer evening, Oak Hill had become unrecognizable. Not in its manicured lawns or pristine streets, but in the warmth that now flowed through its community. The Richardsons' driveway, once the site of suspicion, now hosted the monthly Coffee with the Chief gathering, where residents shared concerns over Diana's famous homemade scones. Karen Matthews stood in her kitchen, no longer peering through gossamer curtains, but gazing openly through wide-open windows at the diverse group of neighbors crossing her lawn. The autumn air carried the scent of pumpkin spice and the sound of children's laughter as families gathered for the first annual Oak Hill Unity Festival. "Mom," Sarah called from the living room, where she was helping set up the presentation screen. "Channel 8 is here for your interview about the program going statewide." Karen smoothed her blazer, a far cry from the nervous woman who had clutched her phone that summer evening. The doorbell chimed. Judge Diana arriving early to review their presentation on the Matthews-Richardson Community Integration Model, as it had been officially named. "Can you believe it's been 6 months?" Diana asked, settling into what had become her usual spot at Karen's kitchen island. "Marcus just got off the phone with the governor's office. They want to implement the program across all police departments in the state." Outside, Maya's production crew, yes, she had one now, after her documentary series went viral, was setting up for the day's filming. Her TikTok channel had evolved into a full-fledged social justice platform, with the Oak Hill transformation as its crown jewel. "Remember when I thought your husband was casing houses?" Karen laughed, the memory now a source of rueful amusement rather than shame. "Now we're teaching other communities how to avoid making the same mistakes." The festival grounds, spanning both the Richardsons and Matthews' connected backyards, buzzed with activity. Chief Richardson, still in uniform from his morning shift, was demonstrating proper home security techniques to a group of interested residents. But unlike 6 months ago, the focus wasn't on keeping people out. It was on bringing them in safely. "Karen," Officer Chen called out, arriving with the latest statistics. "The State Review Board just certified our program. We're officially a model for community policing reform." Maya's cameras captured it all, the proud smile on her father's face as he watched his vision of community policing become reality, the warm embrace between Karen and Diana as they celebrated their unlikely partnership, the diverse faces of Oak Hill's newest residents feeling truly at home. "And this," Maya narrated to her camera, "is what happens when we choose understanding over fear, when we transform watching out into reaching out." Her followers had coined a new term, the Oak Hill effect, when prejudice turns into partnership. The festival reached its peak as Karen and Chief Richardson took the stage together. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who had once called the police on him now standing beside him as an equal partner in community safety. 6 months ago, Karen began, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "I thought I knew what community meant. I thought it was about protecting what we had from those we didn't know." She paused, looking out at the faces before her, faces of all colors, ages, and backgrounds, all now integral parts of Oak Hill's fabric. "Today," Chief Richardson continued, picking up seamlessly where Karen left off, "we know that true community safety isn't about cameras and calls to the police. It's about connections and conversations." As if on cue, Judge Diana's phone buzzed. Another community had requested their presence at their town hall, eager to learn from the Oak Hill model. Maya's documentary footage played on the festival's main screen, showing the journey from that tense evening to today's celebration. The final scene captured it perfectly. Karen and the Richardsons, sitting on the porch steps where it all began, planning not how to keep people out, but how to bring more people in. The lights of Oak Hill glowed warmly behind them, no longer casting shadows of suspicion, but illuminating a path forward for communities everywhere. In the end, it wasn't just a neighborhood that had been transformed. It was the very definition of neighborhood watch itself. And from that famous porch on Oak Hill Drive, the light of change continued to spread, one community at a time.